Translation: the value of a moment's association with the devotee of the Lord cannot even be compared to the attainment of heavenly planets or liberation from matter. And what to speak of worldly benedictions in the form of material prosperity, which are for those who are meant for death. Purport: when there are some similar points, it is possible to compare one thing to another. One cannot compare the association of a pure devotee to anything material. Men who are addicted to material happiness aspire to reach the heavenly planets like the moon, Venus, and Indraloka, and those who are advanced in material philosophical speculations aspire after liberation from all material bondage. When one becomes frustrated with all kinds of material advancement, one desires the opposite type of liberation, which is called apunarbhava, or no rebirth. But the pure devotees of the Lord do not aspire after the happiness obtained in the heavenly kingdom, nor do they aspire after liberation from material bondage. In other words, for the pure devotees of the Lord, the material pleasures obtainable in the heavenly planets are like phantasmagoria, and because they are already liberated from all material conceptions of pleasure and distress, they are actually liberated even in the material world. This means that the pure devotees of the Lord are engaged in a transcendental existence, namely in the loving service of the Lord, both in the material world and in the spiritual world. As a government servant is always the same, either in the office or at home or any place, so the devotee has nothing to do with anything material, for he is exclusively engaged in the transcendental service of the Lord. Since he has nothing to do with anything material, what pleasure can he derive from material benedictions like kingship or other overlordships, which are finished quickly with the end of the body? Devotional service is eternal, it has no end, and because it is spiritual. Therefore, since the assets of a pure devotee are completely different from material assets, there is no comparison between the two. Suta Goswami was a pure devotee of the Lord, and therefore his association with the rishis in Naimisharanya is unique. In the material world, association with gross materialists is veritably condemned. The materialist is called a yoshit sangi, or one who is much attached to material engagement, women and other paraphernalia. Such attachment is conditioned because it drives away the benedictions of life and prosperity. And just the opposite is a Bhagavata Sangi, or one who is always in the association of the Lord's name, form, qualities, etc. Such association is always desirable. It is worshipable, it is praiseworthy, and one may accept it as the highest goal of life. Translation: the value of a moment's association with the devotee of the Lord cannot even be compared to the attainment of heavenly planets or liberation from matter, and what to speak of worldly benedictions in the form of material prosperity, which are for those who are meant for death. This is a very famous verse glorifying the association with devotees. And it does so by comparing that association with other types of facility or goals that we have in the material world. And ultimately, as the verse says, and Prabhupada explains in the purport, there's no comparison. So that first word, tulayama, that comes from tul. There's one astrological sign called Libra in the sky, and it's actually a representation of scales. So in Sanskrit it's tula. Scales are tula because you're trying to balance the scales and make equal. Of course, it also stands for justice, Libra, liberty, and all that. So there's equality in one sense. So we're trying to weigh something against the other and make it equal. So that was tulayama, comparison, or make equal. But here it says there's no equal. You can't equal to anything. You cannot compare it to anything. So equality is one thing, and then comparison is another thing. We also have what we call similes in English. This is like that. Let's say Krishna's face is like the moon. So we're comparing one thing to the other. Of course, we cannot compare anything to Krishna's face, but then we try to think of something which is somewhat comparable because there's some similarity there with the brightness of the moon, the beauty of the moon, the coolness of the moon, etc. So, we get some sort of comparison even though there's no real comparison. So this is often done in Sanskrit. We compare Krishna's eyes to lotus petals, or Radha's complexion to lightning flash like this, whatever. So there's no comparison, but we kind of equate one with the other. But we can't do that here with the association of devotees. It's not like this, it's not like that. There's nothing we can compare it to. There's nothing equal to it. In fact, there's nothing, not even unequal to it. Everything is so insignificant. And the reason is that the result of devotee association is completely different from everything else that we're familiar with. In other words, it's through the association and mercy of devotees that we get faith. That is conviction in the existence of the Lord, conviction in a process called Bhakti Yoga, conviction in the Bhakti scriptures. So that is rarely attained, but it's only attained by mercy and association of devotees. And after we get that faith, then the next step is to approach devotees to get a clear idea of what is in the Bhakti scriptures. So we have Shraddha, at first, Ado Shraddha, and then we have Sadhu Sangha, association with the devotees. And then after that we have Bhajana Kriya, performing the activities of bhakti. So in order to get from faith to performance of bhakti, then we need association. We need the mercy of devotees again. So we have mercy of devotees, then we have faith, then we have mercy of devotees, then we have bhakti. And then even after we do bhakti, all along the way when we're doing sadhana bhakti, to bhava bhakti, to prema bhakti, we need association again. So that sadhu sangha, or association of devotees, is a constant factor from the very beginning till the very end. And so what is the value of that? The devotee, the person, the materialistic person, eventually gets faith, then he develops bhakti, and finally gets prema. So the devotee attains eternal perfection in the spiritual world in association of the Lord, in a blissful relationship. That's the final result. And everything else, any other process, any other activities will not bring that about. Yeah. So broadly we have these different things mentioned here. One goal is svarga, which means afterlife, enjoyment afterlife, in afterlife. To do that, we have to do pious activities, or punya. And one of the major activities is to do great sacrifices, or yagyas. And by that we get punya, or piety. Then when we die, we get promoted to svarga loka. And there we can live for thousands of years and get some higher pleasures. But it's material. So that is one goal for people. Other people aren't even that elevated. They just want to get something in this life. Let me get some enjoyment now. So their artha and kama is limited to enjoying within this particular life, not even thinking about next life. They may follow dharma, they may not follow dharma. If they follow dharma, then they get a chance of enjoying a little bit every lifetime. If they don't follow dharma and they commit sin, then they suffer more. So, by one's efforts, one can get a little bit of something in this lifetime, but that's useless. It's material again. If we're more intelligent, we'll strive we'll follow Dharma, and this way we can, birth after birth, have some enjoyment. And if we're more ambitious, we can promote ourselves to Svargaloka. So that's the one goal. But that's insignificant in comparison to eternal spiritual life and the bliss one gets in relationship with the Lord. That material happiness is very insignificant. And as Prabhupada mentions in the purport, if we get frustrated with material enjoyment on this earth planet or in Svargaloka, higher planetary systems, then we go for ending the process of birth and death. So that is called liberation. Another word for liberation, a synonym, is apunarbhavam, which literally means don't take birth again. Stop the process of birth and death. Stop the wheel of samsara. That's apunarbhavam. So that's the goal of jnanis and yogis. They realize the insignificance of material world, including Svargaloka, so they strive to get out of the material world. And that's called liberation. It's a type of happiness greater than the happiness of Svargaloka because it doesn't involve anything material. It's not temporary. And one is free from karma, which causes pain, suffering. We're free from birth and death. So it's eternal. So then we'll say, it's happiness, that's bliss. So relative to the material world, yes, it's more peaceful. However, this is nothing in comparison to the experience of bliss in the spiritual world when one serves the Lord. That is in prema. There's no comparison between the types of bliss. So that's made very explicit in the Nectar of Devotion. In the very beginning, Rupa Goswami discusses the unique qualities of bhakti. So of course bhakti has different levels. We have sadhana, bhava, and prema. So in prema, there are two unique qualities. One of those qualities is Sandrananda, which means very intense bliss. Now even in bhava stage, which is preliminary to prema, there is bliss. And we can even say with liberation from the material world, that is mukti, there is some sort of bliss. Even the bliss of bhava is much greater than the bliss of liberation. So the devotee, when he attains bhava and actually has a vision of Krishna, he's developed a spiritual body, and he can see Krishna with the spiritual eyes, etc., and hear him with his spiritual ears. Then, at that stage, that bliss he experiences is so great that he considers liberation as completely insignificant and rejectable. That's in bhava stage. But the bliss in prema is Sandrananda. It's much, much greater than the bliss in bhava stage. So in the definition of prema, it is said that bhava is like one ray of the sun, and prema is like the full sun. So even in comparison to prema, bhava is nothing, but bhava is so much greater than liberation. And of course liberation is so much greater than svarga, and svarga is much greater than material life on our planet, Martyaloka. But so in this way, all of these types of bliss are there, but the bliss in the spiritual world is the greatest of all, much, much, millions of times greater than anything else. So it is said that the bliss available in mukti is like a drop of water in the desert. It is insignificant compared to the ocean of bliss. One drop in comparison to an ocean. So how do we attain that? We attain that spiritual world by association of devotees. So in other words, devotee association here is praised because the result of that is much greater than svarga, liberation, or staying on an earth planet or whatever. Right? So what is that one as a devotee? We have to associate with devotees. So that the definition of a real Vaishnava or a real devotee or a sadhu, we say sadhu sangha, so we mean real devotee. So that definition will mean that it's a person who is fixed in devotional service in that process of bhakti. He is steady. So we can say, in one sense, he is a madhyamadikari, devotee. Another way of saying it is that the bhakti in the jiva has developed to a certain extent. So in other words, bhakti shakti, which is ultimately coming from Krishna, has manifested to some degree in that individual and is quite steady. So his devotional attitude coming from the jiva is quite activated at this stage. It's not 100% there because we have many anarthas, but still it's okay. So that devotee has the power to preach. He's not 100%, he's not a prem bhakta, he's not a bhav bhakta, he's just doing sadhana. But at least he has that shakti of the Lord, and that gives him the ability to spread that shakti to others. So this is the quality of a real devotee. He can spread the bhakti to others. So therefore his association is very praiseworthy here. So the devotee is there, that he has got this shakti in him and he can spread that to others, mainly the madhyamadikaris. And how does it spread? So it's not material. It acts similarly in one sense. Like material things associate like this and something happens. They get together, chemical compounds and things like this. One thing influences the other. So yes, in that sense association is good, but so we say physical proximity. But that's not the most important aspect. They just be physically present. If there is more than that, it becomes better. That is, if there's a relationship established, then there's better influence. So therefore, when you talk about sadhu sangha, have sadhu sangha and avoid the asat sangha, what we mean is we have an affectionate relationship with devotees, and we don't have an affectionate relationship with the materialists and the demons. We avoid them. We may come close to them, but we don't establish a very affectionate relationship with them. So that's what the sangha is. There's some emotional element there that binds us to the devotees. However, this again is not material. If we have a material affection, like we have material affection for father and mother and friend or whatever, no, it's not like that. This is based upon bhakti. So we have a favorable relationship with the devotees because of the devotional element, and it's all related to Krishna. So that's what the association is. So this becomes very powerful. So in Nectar of Instruction there, Rupa Goswami says, what are the modes of showing affection? Giving prasadam, receiving prasadam, giving gifts, receiving gifts, giving knowledge, receiving knowledge. So it's an exchange there. So this establishes the relationship very nicely and the affection and whatever. And in that position then, we get this very good result. That is advancement of bhakti. So that's an ideal position. However, to start with, nobody has faith, so they're not going to even approach a devotee in a favorable way. So how is it possible to do anything? So therefore, in order to establish faith, there's another way in which the devotee associates with others. And that is, we can say, the candidate has no favorability at all. So all that can be done is he can get the association without even knowing it, that's all. So this is what we call agyata sukriti. We can say unintentional association. On the devotee's part, it may be intentional. The non-devotee's part is nothing. He doesn't recognize devotees at all. So, and you cannot preach to them because they don't have faith. So this is what agyata sukriti is: association without that other person really knowing about it. But it's very slight. When we have this friendly association, the effect is very strong, so we can advance quickly in bhakti. When we have this other association, which is, we can say, unintentional or whatever, then it's a little weak. So it takes many lifetimes of accidental contact with devotees to develop until we get shraddha. But nevertheless, it's through that devotees' association that the faith will develop eventually. Yeah. So, therefore, the devotee should never be discouraged in this material world. We cannot always see the effect of bhakti on the jivas. We may look for some external immediate result. It may not be there. But the jiva gets affected somehow or other by this accidental or unintentional association. And it may take many lifetimes to manifest, but it's always there. So the devotee should not give up hope and say that his influence is not having any effect. It's there, but it may not be manifest in many, many different people. So that also is a type of association. So the devotees are very merciful, and they go throughout the world. They cannot preach to the faithless people, but their mere presence in the world somehow affects everybody. And they can also accidentally engage people. So they may give them prasadam, or they may have Rath Yatra and somebody sees the form of Jagannath or whatever like that, doesn't know what it is and just walks away. But no, it has an effect on these people also. So all the accidental ways in which they can contact bhakti are useful for them. Or even if there's some publicity about Krishna, then they read it in the newspaper, they don't think anything about it, but it's effective also. So they get exposure to Krishna somehow or other through various means, and that's all done through the activities of devotees. So it's a very gradual effect, but nevertheless that's a type of preaching also to the non-devotees, the non-faithful. So that's the initial stage. So the devotee is very important. Without that, no one can suddenly develop bhakti. We have to get faith. To get the faith, then we have to have all of this preliminary stuff going on. And it's all because of devotees. And once the faith is there, then the devotee is required also. So we may think that the devotee is not necessary because now we've got so many books available everywhere. Previously, there were no books available. In Lord Chaitanya's time, not many books were available. It's very interesting. How did the Goswamis quote all these scriptures from somewhere? Because they didn't have a library to go to, they didn't have internet, they didn't have whatever. They had to somehow memorize all these things from somebody else's place, or some wealthy person or the king or somebody had a library, and they could memorize everything, and they had to keep it in their mind, and later on they had to start writing all these things. So books are not readily available, only on a few palm leaf manuscripts. For instance, Lord Chaitanya, when he was in South India, he went to one temple in South India near the tip of India down there in Kerala. It's the Adikeshava temple. And when he was there, then in that temple they had some scriptures written on palm leaves, which are very perishable. And one of them was the part of the Brahma Samhita. So that's the 5th chapter of Brahma Samhita. So he had somebody copy that out. Somehow he got them to do that. They copied it out. And then he brought that back from South India all the way up to Puri when he came back. And then this way it was preserved and became popular among the Gaudiya Vaishnavas. But if you look in that temple now, nothing is there. We don't know the rest of that work. Whereas the other chapters of the Brahma Samhita, we don't know. Can't find it anywhere in India even. That Brahma Samhita is not there. So that was Lord Chaitanya, just one little thing he brought back, and that was preserved and copied again. And then it was okay. So books were not readily available at that time, and therefore you had to learn from somebody. It was all oral. There were no videos, there's no tape recordings, there's nothing. To get the knowledge, you have to go to individual. Unless you were so wealthy you had a library, then you could go to your library. Yeah? However, even if you do have the books available, still you need the devotees. Yeah? So in the present world, we do have all some facilities for getting scriptures and knowledge, etc. But that does not mean that therefore we don't need the devotees to give the scripture. No, it's still necessary. Huh? So, in the Nectar Devotion, in the first chapter there, first part, Rupa Goswami says, you cannot understand this work, even if you got it available, even if you go to the library and have it or whatever, you cannot understand this unless you have ruchi, unless you have taste. So unless you develop some bhakti, you cannot really appreciate and understand the scriptures nicely. So you can have all the books and read them all, but if you don't have a mature bhakti, you won't get the result. You won't get the real conclusion of everything. You won't get the proper understanding. So therefore, the devotees are necessary to help us penetrate the scriptures. They help us develop our Krishna consciousness and then give us a maturity so that we can understand the essence of the scripture. Unfortunately, those scriptures are readily available. The nature of scripture is such that it's not really accessible, even if you have it written down, even if it's available in so many media and electronic and whatever. The meaning is not so apparent. The meaning is hidden. So in the 11th canto of Bhagavatam, Krishna says to Arjuna, the sages speak indirectly. They don't speak everything out front. It's all hidden. Indirect. And I like that method also, Krishna says. So therefore Krishna also doesn't speak directly in all cases. So therefore, to get the message even of Bhagavad Gita, which is much, much simple form of the Vedic literature and the Upanishads and whatever, is very simple in comparison. Still, to get the real essence, you do need to work a little bit and use your intelligence. Otherwise you can come up with completely wrong conclusions, as many commentators on Bhagavad Gita do. So you do need some guidance in this whole process. So, same with Bhagavatam. Rupa Goswami said, Vishwanath says, Bhagavatam is like Mohini Avatar. Mohini Avatar stole the nectar from the demons and gave it to the devotees. So Bhagavatam hides the nectar from the demons and the materialists and the Mayavadis and gives the sweetness to the devotees. So on the surface, people can read, they don't get anything. They don't get the sweetness. They don't get the rasa out of Bhagavatam. The devotees, because they have faith and they went through association with devotees, they have proper attitude, they read it, then they can extract the essence of the real meaning of the Bhagavatam, and they can appreciate everything in the Bhagavatam in a proper way. So, therefore, we do need the devotees to explain everything, all the scriptures. The scriptures are there, but again, devotees are necessary. So we have association of devotees, unintentional, and then we get faith. With faith, then we have faith in scripture, but we need sadhu sangha to get the proper meaning. Then we can practice bhakti properly. Then we begin advancing. But even then, we need association again. So Rupa Goswami says the three types of mercy you can get is taking the foot water of a devotee, taking his prasadam, or taking his foot dust. This is how you can advance in devotional service. So it is through devotees somehow or other that we can advance through their association. And of course, the most important thing there is that we follow the instructions of the devotee, we follow the teachings of the devotee. And we do that, then we can advance nicely. And then we get the final result, which is much greater than liberation or svarga or anywhere on earth. So in that sense, nothing is comparable. Now here it says alava. Alava is a little small portion of time. I don't know if it's a second or half a second or whatever it is. Alava. So even 1 second association or portion of a second association with a devotee is much greater than attainment of Svargaloka, because even that 1 second of association can do so much to put the devotee on the right path, and so he can attain prema. So it doesn't depend on long association. We see that Prabhupada, how much he associated with Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. You can count the times he met him on your fingers, maybe 10 times or whatever, and less than that maybe. A few hours total, probably. So, but a few seconds are enough to give inspiration and inspire a person to do many things. So, therefore, even a moment's association has such a great effect. What to speak of if we have prolonged association, we get teachings, etc., then a very great effect. So, in any case, it's inconceivable how a second association can cause such a problem, effect. But it happens, we see, in the case of Prabhupada. Others had so much association with Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. What did they accomplish? Prabhupada, much less. He accomplished so much more. How? Because it's inconceivable. It's not bound by material limits of time and space and whatever. So that's the nature of devotee association, because it involves the Shakti of Bhakti, which is inconceivable. Therefore, it can do remarkable things. Okay, any question?
In some of our communities, out of the 6 exchanges of associations, it seems like the one that is most practiced is receive prashadam.
Yeah.
So does that mean they're equal in the value of associating with the devotee, or even if you just come around and just receive prashadam whenever, or is it that you have to practice the other ones in a relatively equal way to get the benefit of associating with the devotee?
Of course, here in that particular verse, it's to receive prasadam and give prasadam. So technically they should respond, and they should feed you also. They should give you prasadam. If they're going to take prasadam, they should also feed you somehow. That would be the proper exchange, for equals at least. That's how they advance. In other words, one is not taking advantage of the other. They're mutually supporting each other and respecting each other as devotees. So that would be the proper way of doing it. Nevertheless, if they take prasadam, anyone takes prasadam, knowingly or unknowingly, they get some advancement by that, provided they have no bad attitude in their mind towards devotees. But if there's that equal exchange, then for those type of devotees, it's much better.
If you were to classify...
In other words, it's a one-way association. When we get a two-way association, it's much better.
So let's say if you were to qualify, because, like, for example, classes, it's easy because you receive knowledge,
yeah.
And you give knowledge.
Yeah.
But how about like kirtan? If you want to classify kirtan within those 6 exchanges for associating with devotees, which one would you classify it?
Kirtan? I guess that would be giving and receiving knowledge, part of the knowledge aspect. So which is an important aspect.
And would you qualify service in the gift section?
Services.
Like if you serve a devotee or receive service from the devotee.
Yeah. Vaishnava Seva of different sorts, yeah. So we serve them in different ways, or we give things to them and whatever like that. So that's all the giving and receiving aspect.
So what's your conclusion then on any of those? You have to be standing on both sides, giving and receiving, to be able to...
Yeah. For devotees of like equal status, who are, let's say, Madhyamadikaris or whatever, then it should be like an equal, it's equal, a give and exchange. Huh? If the one person is superior, let's say we have a very advanced devotee and a less advanced devotee, then it's not exactly the same. It's not that the superior devotee is obligated to feed the other one, but rather they serve. So they do all the activities towards that person. So they're doing all the activities. They're receiving the knowledge, they're giving the prasadam, they're giving the gifts. The other person is giving the knowledge and receiving. So it's more like the one way. And then the Madhyamadikari towards the Kanishtas, then he will do the opposite. He'll be in the higher position, so he'll have to do more of that. And the person in the lower position, obviously he cannot give knowledge. He receives the knowledge, like that. So if it's equals, then it's equal. And if it's with inferiors, then we let's say we give the prasadam and we don't expect them to give us prasadam back. But we're hoping that the devotees in general are on the Madhyam level, because the Kanishtas are like almost, they're Vaishnava Praya, half devotees.
Thank you for the class, Maharaj. Just on the same point of Jesus Prabhu, in terms of devotee association, so that can also extend to the temple. So we read in the scriptures that the temple and Krishna is not our order supplier. So how to develop that mentality that also Krishna Kirtan Prabhu raised a point recently about it's on Krishna's terms. Sometimes we find devotees, they want to come and serve on their terms, and like for now there's lockdown, so like Prabhupada wanted us to follow the GBC and the authorities, but they said, and they may be Madhyam and they may be preaching, but they want to do it according to their terms, they don't want to follow stay. So how do we understand that they are on Madhyam, but they want to do things on their terms, like perhaps outside, they have their own program. When they come to the temple, they come sometimes for prasadam and take, but they don't want to give. They don't want to give service. They don't want to give Lakshmi. They, it's all on their terms sometimes. Some of them. I mean, it can also apply at the temple. Like our consciousness also maybe like take. So how to change that?
Well, it depends on maturity. So in other words, bhakti itself is not a matter of demanding anything. One of the first, the cornerstone of chanting is to be humbler than a blade of grass and more tolerant than a tree. So we don't get upset if there are obstacles to the way we want to do bhakti or whatever. We try to accommodate ourselves within all sorts of conditions. As for temples and devotees related to the temples, as an organization, as part of ISKCON, we do have an authority structure. So we have to work within that also. Of course, we have devotee relationship, etc. But then we also have an authority structure. We have systems, and somebody has to make rules, and then people have to follow rules. People can't act independently. So this, in any organization, there has to be some sort of system of rules. So within ISKCON also, we have sets of rules also. And the authorities are there. They're the ones empowered or, let's say, assigned to institute the rules. So then the people have to follow. You may have your own ideas about it, but nevertheless we follow, just like in any country of the world. You may not like the laws of the country, but you follow them anyway. Otherwise they may throw you in jail or kick you out of the country or whatever like that. So you can't just do whatever you want wherever you go. There's rules everywhere. So there's rules of conduct in Australia. If you don't follow the rules, they'll also tell you to leave the country. So we, within the society, again, we do have rules, and there's an authority structure there. So we have to work within that. And everyone should understand that. It may give us a little inconvenience or whatnot, but we have to tolerate that. Okay. Hare Krishna.